Okay, guys, so now we're going to transfer to our second guest. I know this format's very unusual for all our long-time listeners. They're used to having us do some breaking news right now, talking some stories, but today is a very special day where we are front-loading our guests, and we are very excited to do so. You guys are still awake. So right now we are setting up for our next guest. Sitting down right now. Hey, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Scott Frankel. I'm running for Circuit Court Judge in the 11th Subcircuit.
Well, it's really nice for you to come on our studio. You're actually the first, I think, judicial candidate that we've actually had on the show. Can you just give us a little background on yourself? I know you grew up in Oak Park. For full disclosure, I knew you when I was much younger. We met a few times here and there. But give us your backstory.
Sure. I actually didn't grow up in Oak Park, but I've lived in Oak Park for 20 years, where I raised my two kids through the public schools. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 30 years, primarily doing criminal defense. I started my legal career at Ohio State Law School, where I was editor-in-chief of the Law Journal. After law school, I clerked for a federal judge. After the clerkship, I joined a law firm, a large corporate law firm, Mayer Brown and Platt. And then I decided I was going to make a career shift and change my professional path, and I joined the Cook County Public Defender's Office. After spending some time in the Public Defender's Office, I went into private practice, where I represent individuals in criminal cases and also in civil rights cases. I do that in federal and state court, both appointed and retained. I've had all kinds of cases, including death penalty cases at federal and state court. I'm certified by the Illinois Supreme Court to be lead counsel in death penalty cases. Thankfully, the Illinois Supreme Court eliminated the Illinois legislature repealed the death penalty in Illinois, but the federal government still has an active death penalty, and they need lawyers who are qualified and competent to represent people and defend them in those kinds of cases. As far as Oak Park goes, our family has really loved Oak Park. It is, as you know, an open, welcoming, and diverse community. And I know that my kids are better people for having been raised there. And I know I'm a better person for having lived there for the past 20 years. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, so of course you're running for the 11th Subcircuit of Cook County, and it's important to note that Heartlands Media, we've covered a few events, especially at some courts in Cook County, in regards to people challenging bail bonds and making sure that the system is at least feasible for at least people from low-income backgrounds to at least get a fair trial, and at the same time not get arrested or put into jail due to the fact that they can't pay off their bail bonds. So essentially, what are your initial thoughts as a judge on this initial impact and these reforms that people want in regards to having a fair system to represent them?
Sure. I've spent, as I said, 30 years fighting for individuals in the courtroom, and I understand that every time someone walks into the courtroom, the judge has the power to change that person's life forever. Yeah. People are always scared and nervous. It doesn't matter if they're charged in a murder case. My clients are nervous and scared, of course, but even with traffic tickets, people are nervous and scared when they walk into the courtroom. As a lawyer, I've always been sensitive to that, and as a judge, I'll always be sensitive to that. As far as reforms that are needed in the judicial system, no question about it. I mean, I've been knocking my head against the wall for clients about certain issues for a long time. The judicial system always needs work to be made fairer, more even-handed, and to have outcomes that the public can respect as legitimate. As a judge, I will work really hard to do the kind of work that people will be glad to see a judge do. As far as the specific issue of bonds and what kinds of reforms I support, I do think that too many people are kept in custody as a result of their inability to pay a bond. I mean, this is a problem. There should not be discrimination based on economics on whether you were in custody or out of custody. My experience in federal court tells me that there can be a system that is fair and doesn't require a monetary bond. What the federal court does is it sets up a system where a judge decides if someone should be released or kept in custody. If the judge decides that that person should be released based on the charges and their background and the other variables involved in the case, the judge can set conditions for release. That could include posting property or signing guarantees, having family members come in and co-sign bonds. There are lots of creative ways you can structure a bond system that is fair and also doesn't discriminate economically against individuals who can't afford to pay cash bonds.
Now, we've covered a lot in regards to corruption here in Illinois, Chicago, Cook County as a whole, and of course, without a shadow of a doubt, people always feel that the system doesn't represent them. You spent some time as a defense lawyer. What reforms are really necessary to protect working class families? Because not everyone in the city doesn't have access to a high paid lawyer to get them out. Whereas, if the average working class family member or somebody who is working 2 or 3 jobs is put into the system, it's corrupt and it's outdated. What reforms are really needed to really fix it, especially from your time as a defense lawyer? What have you seen that needs to be fixed?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that we need resources devoted to the system to allow the lawyers to do the job that they're able to do. I think I was a Cook County public defender, and I think some of the best lawyers in the county are at the Cook County Public Defender's Office. The lawyers need resources. The lawyers need the same resources that the retained attorneys have. In federal court, where I do a lot of appointed work, the court provides resources, even in appointed cases, for expert witnesses, mitigation witnesses, investigators, things like that. In state court, the public defender's office has resources, but I think needs more resources, can always use more resources, more attorneys, more ability to defend people to the best of the lawyer's ability.
So we've heard from other cities that sometimes a defense attorney will only have 12 minutes of time available for a client, and then they have to move on to someone else. What is the workload like along the same lines you're mentioning as a public defender here in Chicago?
I actually don't know what the current caseload is for public defenders in the courtroom, so I couldn't comment on that. But I could say that the fewer cases you have, the more attention you can give to each individual client. And that's simply a resource issue. You need to have more lawyers who have fewer cases in the courtroom. I think in Cook County there's a resource issue. There's a shortage of resources across the board in the state's attorney's office, the public defender's office, and in the judiciary. Part of the problem is that it costs money to provide the highest level of defense for people, and I think that's what you have to consider when you're going down the road and trying to make the system fair. I also think you need judges who are open-minded and fair and understand that the individuals before them and the lawyers practicing before them need to be addressed, I guess, in a patient and open-minded manner. The courtrooms need to be run in a balanced and fair way. When a client is finished with their case, they need to feel that justice has been done, whether they've won that case or whether they've lost that case. Because if they see that the system has been fair for them and that someone has been fighting for them all along the way, the judges have been open-minded, the judge has been open-minded and has not cut off their lawyer's ability to tell the client's story, and the judge has been fair and patient. Those are things that make people feel that the justice system is working for them instead of against them.
We've also seen across the country the mention of cannabis being legalized, at least at the state level, and Illinois is on the frontiers of having it legalized here, potentially perhaps not maybe this year, but perhaps next year. And, of course, federal law, thanks to Jeff Sessions, is saying that the federal law will supersede all state laws, especially those states that have legalized cannabis, be it for medicinal use or recreational use. But there are many states that are now standing up and resisting, and there are even judges, most notably in San Francisco, who are releasing current convicts who've been put in prison due to the fact that they were holding on to bags of marijuana, but now they're letting them go. Essentially, what are your thoughts on cannabis legalization, and should we have it legalized here in our state? And you have two conflicting issues: state legalization here in Illinois, and then you have the federal intervention from Jeff Sessions saying that it shouldn't be legal.
Well, that's a tough question for a judicial candidate to answer because as a judge, I would be required to apply the law fairly, evenly, and balanced no matter what the law is. So my personal feeling about what should happen with marijuana can't affect the kind of judge I'm going to be because in order to do justice, the judge is required to follow the law, of course. I can tell you that it's clear that even in Illinois, there's been over the course of my 30-year career, I've seen a complete change in social attitudes towards marijuana. And to the point where even in Chicago, small amounts of possession of marijuana have been decriminalized. And I do think that's a positive trend. The problem with over-criminalizing conduct such as marijuana possession is that you create a mark on someone's record that makes it difficult for them to move forward as a productive member of society. I think that's the key thing we have here is that if someone makes a mistake in their life, there needs to be a way for them to make a transition back into a productive way of earning a living and raising a family and having a home. And a conviction, whether it's a misdemeanor conviction or a felony conviction, stays with someone forever. And unless they're lucky enough to obtain some kind of clemency or pardon from the governor. So I think in that sense, we have to be really careful about giving people convictions over things that maybe society doesn't think they deserve a conviction over. And I think marijuana is one area where we've seen such a huge change. You've got whole states that have legalized the use of marijuana, possession and use of marijuana. How do we move forward in the state of Illinois and think about our values and create a system that's fair and doesn't harm people in their desire to be good members of society? Now, the other issue is that you have to worry about the Trump administration and Attorney General Sessions because their attitude towards marijuana is completely different from what I think is the general trend in society. And they have said that they're not going to recognize states that pass marijuana reforms, legal reforms around marijuana. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know what the trends are going to be in terms of, or where the clashes are going to be. And we've seen a lot of clashes between the federal government and some local governments. We're experiencing one right now in the area of immigration. So it's anybody's guess where all this is going to go.
Now, with this election cycle that's happening, we're seeing a lot of people get actively involved in politics and campaigns and volunteering. So as your campaign was getting started, what have you seen first and foremost with the community outreach when your people are knocking on doors and canvassing? What have you been hearing from voters, and what concerns have they brought up to you?
Well, again, you know, as a judicial candidate, I'm running mostly on my experience. I'm also running for the Democratic nomination as an independent. So I think that when I'm knocking on doors, I'm telling people, and people who are knocking on doors for me are telling people that Scott's independent. He's independent-minded. No one's going to come after me later to remind me that they did a favor for me by slating me or anything like that, and I don't owe anybody money because of some kind of slating process. In some of the judicial races, after you've been slated for a judge, the party comes back to you and asks you for a substantial contribution. That's not going on in my campaign. I'm running completely independent. I think that's a value you want on the bench. You want a judge who's going to see every case completely independently. You want a judge who is an independent person, who's independent-minded. And I think that message about my campaign has been resonating in my community.
And running as an independent, have you received any pushback from the Democratic establishment here in Illinois?
No, I haven't gotten any, I wouldn't say pushback, but I would say that the Democratic Party is a very highly structured and organized system. I'm running outside of that system, and so I'm learning a lot about politics, let's put it that way.
All right, yeah, and of course we've all seen how money in politics is really impacting a lot of these election cycles, and there's always going to be, of course, a huge voter turn. Well, there possibly might be a huge voter turnout, especially as we reach close to the March 20th primary. But I think a lot of people are also wondering, like, what will you do different as a judge? I mean, we know that, of course, being a judicial candidate is going to be different than a congressional candidate running at the federal level or anyone else like running at a state level office. But I think a lot of people just really want to know, how are you going to be different than any other previous people running for office?
Well, I think I'm different in a lot of ways from other candidates for judge. First, I have experience that is very broad. I've been practicing law for 30 years in federal and state court. I've been in every courtroom in the county. We're talking not only 26 in California and Daly Center, but Rolling Meadows, Bridgeview, and the others. I've been in downstate counties representing people. I've represented people at the most complicated cases, including death penalty cases. I've had $1 million, $30 million or more fraud cases, multiple hundreds of jury trials, or I don't even know how many jury trials exactly I've had. I've lost count a long time ago. So in that sense, my experience, I think experience is needed for a judge. The judge needs to have seen a lot of kinds of cases, a lot of different kinds of cases, have had a lot of different clients to understand when you're making a decision in one particular case, you have the perspective to understand, is this a really serious case or is this not so serious a case? Does this person deserve compassion, or does this person deserve more punishment? If someone hasn't had that kind of experience, they don't have the frame of reference for making those important decisions. The other thing is I really come out of an Oak Park tradition, which I said before, values diversity, openness, welcoming. I think that makes me different from a lot of candidates who are running. You want a judge with those values who walks into the courtroom and doesn't see the people in the courtroom as hostile to the judge, but as people who are all fighting in good faith, hopefully, to achieve justice. And I've seen justice in the courtroom. When a judge, who I expect is a very harsh judge, deals with a client of mine with compassion in a way that's surprising, the entire courtroom feels it, from the court reporter, the clerks, the judge. People feel that something special has happened, almost kind of a spiritual moment, an epiphany. We can do justice in the courtroom. We need judges who will walk into the courtroom every day and feel that something special can happen, something important can happen in the way of justice and fairness, and that the outcome can be felt to be the true outcome, the right outcome by everyone who's there. And that's the kind of judge I want to be. I do think that sets me apart.
Now, we've covered some activism and protests in Oak Park, and I've noticed there's a lot of community involvement. People get actively involved on progressive policies, and they really get involved at the local level. So when you're there in the courtroom, let's say from your past previous experiences, what have people said to you who perhaps have never been in Oak Park or never had your experience in Oak Park? Have they ever come up to you and say, well, you shouldn't come in here with this kind of mindset? That's not the kind of mindset a defense attorney should have, a judge should have. Have you ever had to deal with anything like that before?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well,
actually.
like, of course, like with Oak Park. I mean, Daniel, you could back me up on this. We've seen a couple things.
So I think what Kit's getting at is, has this open-minded, let's see if there's anything extra we can do, this really going the extra mile, has that ever led other people to critique you for wanting that level of compassion or being open to that level of compassion? Or has that not been an issue people have addressed?
If they've critiqued me for that, I haven't heard it personally, but it's possible, I suppose. Mostly, I've been welcomed by the community, and in my campaigns, I think people recognize me as someone who's exceptionally qualified, who's caring and compassionate. I think I stand outside the typical judicial candidate, and I think and I hope that when people meet me, my qualities resonate with them, and they say, that guy should be a judge. That's the guy. This is the kind of person I wish we had been putting on the bench all along. Someone who really is passionate about these issues, cares, and wants to make a difference. Those are the people who should be judged. And sometimes people with my qualities, they're out there, but it's difficult for them to get recognized through the regular party system. And running as an independent is the only option, and that is unfortunately an uphill battle.
As a defender of justice, here in Chicago, the trust between communities and the Chicago Police Department have kind of been on fragile grounds for quite some time. And after the internal investigation of the Chicago Police Department that was released last January, revealed a lot of racial discrimination, lack of accountability, lack of transparency. How will you be able to build that trust with the Chicago Police Department, making sure that when there is injustice by people that are supposed to serve and protect the communities, what are ways that you can bring those traits of accountability and transparency, and making sure that the right people are judged correctly, and making sure that the people in the communities that they have their day of justice, I suppose.
Well, I think that's a really good and challenging question. I think it's important, for one thing, for judges to have patience in the courtroom. I know that when I go to work and I'm working in a welcoming environment where I feel trusted, I can communicate my position better. But if I'm in an environment where hostility is created, this happens in courtrooms where people are being attacked on both sides, then it's harder to get the message out. I think justice is in the message. It's in the communication. The other thing that I think people have seen is they've come to courtrooms for a long time, and they've seen police officers lie in the courtroom. And I think it's important that whoever lies, whatever witness it is, whether it's a police officer or a civilian witness or whoever it is, the judge needs to pay attention and call people out and make the tough decisions. When people come to court, it is possible for them to feel that they have received justice. The system is an amazing system. I believe in it wholeheartedly. I believe in the courtroom. I believe that special things can happen in the courtroom, that it's a human institution, and when everybody is working together to obtain the correct outcome, it can happen. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. And I think people who come to court and only see and believe that they're being trounced or stepped on, or their honesty is being disregarded for whatever reason, that leaves them with a bitter, sour feeling when they walk away from that courtroom. That feeling spreads in the community, and it creates hostility between people who are just trying to live their lives and the institutions that they have to interact with all the time, such as the police or the courts or anywhere else. And I think we're in a way reaping what we've sowed over these years, where people do feel resentful and untrusting. And as a judge, how much effect will I have over that? I don't know. I might only just be in traffic court. It depends on if I'm lucky enough to win where they assign me. But I can tell you that I will come to court every day with this mindset that we need to work hard to make people feel that fairness has happened in the courtroom. And I think that if people walk away from that and go, I got treated fairly in the courtroom today, I think when they walk away and they spread the word, then change can happen. It's a little bit at a time, but everybody has to have good faith. Everybody has to believe in what they're doing and that it's possible to be a little bit better. And I really believe that's possible in the courtroom. I've spent 30 years working in the courtroom, fighting for people, and I'm still doing it. It's not an easy job. You lose a lot, quite frankly, in criminal court. But usually, if you've fought hard and your clients believe in what you've been doing and they see that you've been fighting hard for them, whether you win or lose, people feel that justice has been done.
And I think for a lot of people, they feel like there's been a lack of justice for such a long time that, in fact, if you win your election for the 11th Circuit, I think it's possible, after hearing everything you said and what your character's about, that you could bring in some reform and some trust back into a system that a lot of people have abandoned. What else will really be needed for people to once again believe in our justice system?
I think it just takes a long time. It takes a mindset that requires a perspective that says we believe in the evolution and constant improvement of the system. We need to wake up every day and work towards a better system. We need to be the kind of judge that gives people hope that they're getting a fair shake. It's not just the judges, it's the prosecutors, it's the defense attorneys, it's the police officers. Everybody involved in this system, they go to work at very difficult jobs. They're resented oftentimes by the community, the neighbors, the people who are there. They're trying to help, and yet you have to, it's a challenge, but you can do it. You can stay idealistic and hopeful. If everybody, as many people as possible, had the attitude that they were going to stay hopeful and work towards the best that this system can offer, I think over time you will see improvement. And I do want to be the kind of judge that spends time working on reforms, serving on committees, traveling, addressing people, doing whatever it can take to make people feel that they have a stake in the system and also to improve the system. And I don't know all the opportunities that are available for judges in that respect, but I know there are opportunities for judges to do more than just be in the courtroom. To try to reach out and affect people, to serve on committees, to work with Chief Judge Evans to make the system a better and fairer system. Those are all things that I want to do.
And final question, because our viewers perhaps want to learn more about your campaign. Where can they find your campaign website, and where they can learn more about you on social media?
Sure. First, I want to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk today
We're
and
glad
to
to have
answer
you here.
questions.
Yes.
And my website is frankelforjudge.com. And I think it's Frankel for Judge on Facebook as well. And those are the two places where we have information. There's some videos and some more information about me, and neighbors, friends, and colleagues who have written letters of support are up there too, supporting my candidacy.
Well, on behalf of everyone here at Hard Lens Media, Scott Frankel, thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media.
You're watching Hard Lens Media.